Happy Halloween and welcome to Vanishing Gates. I'm Jay and this is.
Zombunny.
Okay. Zombunny.
That's all I had.
Anyway, alright. How is your Halloween so far, Katie Cat?
I literally worked all day. So, no, but it was good. We had, a couple kids came in costumes and a couple people with costumes. We dressed up and took a picture. It was kind of fun.
Nifty, nifty.
Yeah.
Jack is in the house giving out candy to trick-or-treaters. He's not feeling super great today, so he'll be on the next video, I believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll do another video probably Sunday. But you guys don't need to know what day that is because it doesn't matter for you. It's on YouTube. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. We could really use that. I'm trying to get that algorithm to be more in our favor, and we appreciate it. Also, comments and likes help a lot. So, as it's Halloween, if you've noticed, the last couple of videos we've been following a trend.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with the Candyman.
The Candyman.
So, the last episode was about the inspiration for the movie, the case that inspired the movie The Candyman, or it may have been an inspiration for that film. And then the show before that, the video before that, we talked about the man who killed Halloween, or the real Candyman.
Pixie stick guy.
Yes, the pixie stick killer.
They killed his own son.
Yes, today we're going to talk about a different kind of Candyman. A much worse kind of Candyman. It's going to get dark really fast. Just so you know, if you are worried about hearing about people being mistreated in really graphic, horrible fashions, especially younger people, this is not the show for you. Watch the other ones and hit me up later.
Viewer discretion advised.
Yeah, viewer discretion advised. So, Dean Arnold Corll was born December 1939 in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He died from gunshot wounds to his chest, back, and lungs in August of 1973. It was normally, though, where people would be empathetic and say, oh, that's terrible and all that. Now, hold on to that thought. Just keep that empathy tucked away for future reference, because you're not really going to need that right now. Just believe me, it gets bad. Dean's family had moved from Indiana to Texas after his parents had split up. His parents would get divorced and then remarry again in 1950, only to divorce again after moving to Pasadena, Texas. The divorce was amicable; they got along fine. So the boys were able, I don't remember if he had a sister or a brother, but he had a sibling. I think it was a brother. Older. He had a brother, and then he had a sister later. But he was able to see his dad frequently. It wasn't like he was missing out on his dad. His dad didn't leave for milk and never come back. It was, it was an amicable, so they still worked it out.
Yeah.
His mother did have full custody, but it wasn't an issue seeing his dad. Now, Dean was a shy kid. He didn't socialize well. He seemed to be very empathetic, though, towards others. He really cared about how other people were feeling, what they were going through. He felt for them and stuff, and he was touched by if someone was going through something. It was very sweet. But also, he could not take criticism or rejection well at all. Though he was a sickly kid, he had a heart murmur, and he had rheumatic fever they didn't diagnose until later. But, he just did not do well criticism. He was a really shy kid, really, really fragile ego, I think is the right way to say it.
Okay.
Yeah. I do have notes that I'm reading from, guys, because there's a lot of information here. This is realistically 2 episodes. We're probably going to break them up. After the second divorce, Dean's mom married a traveling clock salesman. You heard that correctly. That really was a thing.
Traveling clock salesman.
I'm not kidding. That was a real job people had. This particular individual had it. The salesman's name was Jake West, and the family, after they got married, his parent, Jake West, and his mother got married, they moved to the small town of Vider outside in Texas, where Dean's sister Joyce was born. So he does have a sister as well. So he has a brother and a sister. Dean's mother and her husband started a candy company from their garage at first. So they just decided, hey, I'm going to open a candy company. And they opened it in their garage, which is exactly where I like to buy candy from.
Yeah, I totally want to just go to somebody's garage.
Someone's
to
janky-ass garage candy.
Homemade candy.
And you guys can kind of get where this is going with that.
Could I say something real quick?
Word.
When I was growing up, like the neighborhood I was growing up in, there was a guy that used to like sell candy out of his house. and it was kind of sketchy.
Kind of sketchy.
No, he sold like candy and like all kinds of other stuff. But anyway, that's
Katie
just
Cat really liked the candy, and that's why she doesn't remember most of her childhood. Anyway.
it just reminded me of that. But anyway.
So, Dean started working there. He was kind of like slave labor, him and his brother. They worked with packaging and stuff like that. And when he wasn't at school, he was making candy. Good old child labor. Jake West would travel, selling the candy along a sales route. Took him mostly to Houston, where the majority of the market share of his candy sales were found to be at. The family moved to the outskirts of Houston later on to be closer to the bulk of the candy sales and opened a new shop called Pecan Prince, which was a family brand name, which is really strange. I know people are going to say I said pecan funny.
Yeah, you say it really weird.
You guys say pecan because you're
I
strange.
say pecan.
Pecan?
Pecan
Okay,
pie.
you say it weirder than I do.
Pecan pie, pecans.
Pecans.
Everybody says it different.
Anyway.
Potato, potato.
In 1960, Dean's mom asked him to move in with his grandmother and take care of her for a while in Indiana. He returned in 1962 to help with the family business, now in Houston Heights, and Dean was living above the candy shop in an apartment. Now, in 1963, Dean's mother would end up divorcing Jake, and she opened her own candy business. Because I don't need no man's candy. Make my own. I made some candy in a garage. You know, mostly when you make things out of like trailers or garages, you think it's like a crystal-y substance, not a crystal-y substance that you can actually ingest. Anyway, she opened the Corll Candy Company, which is Dean's dad's name, his surname, Corll. And so his mom kept that name and put Dean in charge as VP of the family business. That year, a young teenaged employee came to Dean's mom and claimed that Dean had made sexual advances towards him. His mother responded in the most professional way possible. She fired the kid. Immediately fired him. Get the fuck out of my candy shop.
Good.
Don't come back here. No, not good. The kid was harassed.
Oh, he was her. I thought.
No,
said
she
was
didn't. No. She
Oh.
fired the kid that complained.
Oh, okay.
Not the kid. No, her son was the harasser, Dean.
Ah, okay.
Dean was the harasser of young boy.
Gotcha.
Well, in 1964, Dean got drafted into the Army, and while his service was excellent in the Army, he apparently hated it, and he ended up applying for a hardship discharge, which he said was needed because the family business was failing, he said, and he needed to be there to take care of it, and the discharge was granted because, well, partially he was an excellent soldier on paper. Did all the shit he was supposed to do. And he was discharged on June 11th, 1965, all of 10 months into service.
Wow.
Didn't even make it a year, did you, buddy? I know some people that would have some comments about that. Now, apparently, during this time in the military, Dean realized that he was, in fact, hella gay. And he had his first homosexual encounter experience, whatever you want to call it, while enlisted. But people that knew him, they didn't know that, but they knew and they were beginning to notice that he would act slightly, well, differently around younger males of the teenage variety. You folks can probably see where this is going.
Uh-oh.
So eventually he took over the company pretty much completely, carte blanche. Mom still owned it, but he was running everything. And he did what any normal teenage boy-loving fellow would do that owned a candy shop. And he moved the business across the street from a school. The eyes wide. I knew that was going to happen. At this location for the Corll Candy Company is where he'd be known to give out free candy to students, especially teenage boys. So, yeah. We call this in the industry foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. This is how he came to bear the moniker, two monikers, the monikers, plural, Pied Piper and the Candyman. And he hadn't even killed anybody at this point.
Wow.
I don't think you're worried about spoilers, guys. Believe me, you can't spoil this story because you're not going to know exactly. Even though you know where it's going, you're not going to know where it's going. In 1967, he befriended 12-year-old David Owen Brooks. This turned out the way exactly you think it would. So now we officially bring out the wood chipper. If you watch the show long enough, you know that's what I do with kid touchers. Put them in the wood chipper. That's my platform if I run for politics.
Yes.
Walk strong and carry a good wood chipper. And he then proceeded to groom the kid and use him for gratification. Gratification. That's such a great word now. Gratification. I hate that I used it. Gratification. Gratification. Satisfaction and gratifying behavior. Gratification.
Gratification. You just made
Like
up a
the
word.
old Rolling Stones song, if you ever do LSD. But gratification is what my note actually says, but my brain didn't say that. Around 1968, the candy company went tits up, and his mom and sister moved to Colorado. He never saw his mother again, and they did talk on the phone, though. It wasn't like she went tits up with the candy company. She was alive, but she didn't really want to deal with him. So they did talk on the phone, but after the company folded, this disgusting kid toucher became an electrician at Houston Lighting and Power, and he worked there until he got offed. Yeah, offed is in offaged. Bye-bye night time.
Yeah. I think we all know what that means.
Freedom Express. You got little tiny freedom pellets.
The
planted
forever nap.
Yeah, the long night. Now we know he's disgusting, all right? But wait, there's more. Cue Billy Mays. It gets worse. It gets worse before it gets worse. This is one of those slogs, guys. On Wednesday, August 8th, 1973, police officers responded to a distress call at 2020 Lamar Street in Pasadena, Texas, where Dean Corll had moved earlier that summer. Upon arrival, police were met by 17-year-old Elmer Wayne Henley because his parents hated him. They also found Corll's lifeless body. Henley claimed to police that he shot Corll 6 times in self-defense. At least he didn't say that he did it to himself and just landed on 6 bullets. He was honest and said, yeah, I know, I killed him. And this fellow talks. He just talks. We'll get there. It gets bad. It's not bad yet, guys. The worst is yet to come. The young man and 2 other teens that were on the scene were taken to the police station. As the cops looked around more, they noticed the house was barely furnished and the bedroom was rigged up for a special purpose. Plastic sheets were on the carpet to cover them. There was a thick plywood board with handcuffs and ropes and cords all attached to them. It looked like Katie's room. A large bayonet, a huge dildo. It is definitely... Did you just inherit this guy's room? Are you related?
He's lying.
It's not like that. Glass tubes of and like tons of petroleum jelly. It looked like a freak-off party at Diddy's.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Diddy's house.
It was old school though. They didn't have the Johnson & Johnson mineral oil. They had to use the
jelly,
the KY jelly or whatever it is, petroleum jelly. What's the brand of petroleum jelly that everyone would use in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and still probably... Vaseline. You just slurping the Vas down.
That's the original.
What's the Vaseline difference between that and KY? Get it? The Vas... Okay, anyway, moving on. I digress. Now, apparently, there was even a big plywood box in the backyard with air holes in it and human hair hooked in places on the box that had been stuck there. And it was not like it was a big box. A pretty open and shut case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. What comes next is the unraveling of the worst serial killer in America at the time. He actually beat the record with this one, folks. There was one woman prior to him that actually had more kills, and he's like, nah, watch this, KDR, son. Teach you a lesson.
No.
He pre-Call of Duty lobbied this life. In 1970, Corll met Wayne Hensley, a school dropout and drunk and product of a broken home. He introduced Dean to David Brooks, and eventually Dean started offering Wayne money to procure young men and boys for him, much like the Ghislaine Maxwell would do for Epstein, and Epstein did not kill himself. So he has this in common with this guy too. A lot of things in common with this guy. Now here's the thing. There's another tale, like different stories on how they actually met. Some say that David Brooks introduced Dean to Wayne, and some say that Wayne introduced, the other way around. But anyway, we'll get to that. On May 29th, in 1971, 13-year-old David Hilgeist and his friend Gregory Winkle did not make it home after going to the neighborhood pool. The police brushed it off as a runaway situation, and that times were changing and kids were doing dumb things. Don't worry, etc., is what they told the parents. And at the time, that was relatively true. It was counterculture was really swinging on, and kids were leaving home and not coming back. It was not infrequent to have that happen, where kids would just run away.
Yeah, because back then we could afford to do that.
Well, it's usually paid in ways you don't want to think about. These kids would find that out. Around midnight, Miss Winkle got a call from Gregory saying that they were 60 miles away in another place, but wanted to let her know where he was, that it was just a bunch of boys swimming and they would bring him home later. But people the next day were reporting having seen the boys enter a white van, and no one seems to know what happened to the boys after that yet. So they didn't know what was going on. There's no got in the white van. This is before white vans were synonymous with pedos.
Okay.
Now we know if you see a white van, you're probably getting kidnapped and murdered. Graped, like the fruit of the devil. The Hill guys drove to Freeport, where Gregory had claimed to be, and hanging out, and they were hanging out flyers and talking to people, knocking on doors. They had zero luck. No one had seen them at all, period. No dice. So David Hillgeist was friends with Wayne Henley, who dropped by the parents' house to see if he could help put up flyers. Henley being the kid that shot and killed our resident kid toucher, and his, well, assistant, one of them. The parents don't know this, but he does, and he's offering to hand out flyers to help find the kids. On August 17th that year, 17-year-old Reuben Watson was going to go see a movie and told his mother he would see her at 7:30. She would never see him again. March 24th, 1972, Frank Aguirre left work at Long John Silver's. He had told his mom that he'd be home before 10 o'clock. He even called his girlfriend Rhonda to let her know he was heading her way. She waited. He never showed up. Months later, Wayne Henley told Rhonda to give up on ever him coming back. He'd gotten in trouble with the mob, which is hella stupid, a thing to say, because it doesn't make any sense. And then he left, getting into Dean's fucking van. No one's putting pieces together. I would have already. I would have figured it out. All of these kids knew each other. They were even friends for the most part. On May 21st, 1972, 16-year-old Johnny DeLome and 17-year-old friend Bill Bouch disappeared together. 3 days later, Billy's dad would receive a letter from Madisonville, Texas, 70 miles away. Dear Mom and Dad, sorry to do this, but Johnny and I found a better job working for a trucker loading and unloading from Houston to Washington. We'll be back in 3 to 4 weeks. After a week, I will send you money to help you and Mom out. Love, Billy. Now, the Balches, they knew the handwriting on the envelope was definitely their son's handwriting. But the letter was obviously made to look like he had written it. It did not quite match his handwriting. It looked like someone was trying to copy his handwriting. And Mr. Blouch, being a trucker himself, he also knew that that job didn't fucking exist at all. There wasn't a job doing that. He knew because he knew all the things about trucking as a trucker. Now, Johnny's family had also gotten a similar note. They thought it was his handwriting, but due to the perfect spelling, they knew someone was involved, and their son didn't do it himself, because that kid was an idiot when it came to spelling. But it was his handwriting. So clearly someone was involved. The cops at this point weren't helping. It seemed like a clear case of runaways, and there was no law against that at the time. But then, as they thought about some of the things Billy had said, they grew very concerned. I mean, you know, they knew he would hang out at Dean's, and they asked him at one point what they did there. And he responded with, "We play the stereo and watch TV, and Dean shows us things. Once he showed us his handcuffs. We were there with a couple of other boys, David Brooks and somebody else, and they got to playing around with the handcuffs and put them on one of the boys, and then Dean couldn't find the key. He never found the key to take them off."
He never found the key.
Bro, if you're a parent and you hear that story and you allow your kid to still hang out at that place, you're a stupid person and you're a terrible parent and you should never have had kids. Ever. Yeah. This is a different age, though. Things were different then.
Yeah.
So
Very
knowing
different.
now what we know now versus then, obviously we didn't know about white creeper vans. And now anytime you see a white van without windows, you know it's probably busy molesting someone.
Well, not always.
Pretty close. They confronted Dean and
Anyway.
they confronted Dean and asked him if he knew the whereabouts of their son and friends. But Dean was super polite and calm when he talked to them, and he just said, "I'm sorry, I have no idea where they could have gone. I haven't seen them. I'm sorry. Wish I could help." And he seemed very sincere, so they kind of, I guess, left it at that. Which I would have just started beating him. Um, and back then it would have flown. You could have just said, "Hey, he was a fruit," and started hitting him. You know, it would have flown with the cops. I wouldn't say call people that, guys. I wasn't using that. I was using that in a way to describe what you could have said back then, not what you should say now. Okay, so don't get mad at me. And then August of '73 rolled around. Dean was dead, and now Wayne Henley and David Brooks, well, they were talking. They were talking a lot. They were spinning a yarn, weaving quite the web of story. We're getting there. I'm not just stalling. Wayne went on to the police and about how Dean Corll had murdered 3 boys and he buried them under a rented boathouse. Yeah, it get dark fast.
That was 0 to 60.
Yeah, it does that. The whole story does that, and it gets worse. He led police to Southwest Boat Storage, stall 11, a stall with no windows, 2 carpets over a dirt floor, an empty appliance box, a stripped-down car with a canvas tarp on it, and a plastic bag in the back of the stall. Pretty standard. Not too crazy for a storage unit. Inside that bag, though, was an empty bag that once held lime. Not limes, the fruit, but lime,
What's that?
the chemical.
Oh.
So lime is used to break down biological materials. It can be used to slow decomposition. Some people would argue it is used to accelerate decomposition and to break down the cells and the molecules until it's basically gone. It also is an acidic, so it eats up a lot of the DNA evidence, and it would eat up fingerprints and things like that. This is a story on each direction. People argue both ways. It's good for murder, it's not good for murder. Well, back then it was still considered good for murder, I guess. As the police started to dig, guess what? They came across a layer of lime. Come across a layer of lime in the dirt. Dug a few inches further than the lime. Guess what they found, Katie Cat?
You want me to read it?
A plastic sheet.
Oh.
No. And then inside the plastic sheet was a body of a boy that was about 13 years old. So again, it just gets out there really fast. It just explodes in your face. Yes, it's
Yeah.
it's 0. This whole story is 0 to 60.
So they found out that he was murdering those kids.
Oh yeah, he mortified.
Really quick.
Well, I mean,
Really
maybe.
quickly.
Yeah, it seems that way. Below that body, there was a skeleton. So below the dead body was a skeleton. Then, digging right at the grave, there were 2 more bodies. Well, it was an extra body than what the kid said already. Something's not adding up. Now, one had been strangled, and the other one had been shot. The owner of the shed company, or the storage company of the shed, mentioned that Dean wanted to rent an additional shed, as he said space was almost full in that shed. There was no boat in that boat shed. It wasn't full. It was full underneath. She said she had no idea what he'd put in there, and also Dean had rented the shed for 3 years, and by the time midnight hit, there were now 8 bodies by midnight that night. The interrogation of Henley went on the next day, especially now that they found 5 more bodies than they expected to find. Yeah, Wayne went on to detail about how Dean would torture, murder, and molest, etc. With what Henley and Brooks were telling the police now, it just got sicker and sicker, and guys, it gets bad. Wayne went from saying he only helped bring the boys to Dean for money, and then he admitted he also took part in the heinous acts committed on those poor kids. So he was not just privy to luring them in, but he actually was involved. They explained to the police how the victims had to meet parameters. They had to be good looking and young. Very picky people, I guess. They would recruit them, host regular parties with them to get them to feel secure, giving them booze and weed. Henley and Brooks were recruiting lifelong friends, knowing exactly what was going to be done to them. Some of the kids were castrated, and like I said, guys, it just, yeah, in your face, okay? It's what this does. One kid had his buddy gnawed upon, chewed. And a few of them had beaten to death or kicked to death until the life was gone from them. So, yeah, these were really, really nice people. Yeah. Candyman. As Henley and Brooks sat and wrote down a list of victims, they would recall the body count that rose to 17. These are the ones they could remember. Henley then told police that several bodies were buried by Lake Sam Rayburn and also some on a beach. Son of a beach, some on a beach. The beach, Brooks said, was where they would find Corll's first victim. Jeffrey Conan had disappeared in 1970 while hitchhiking with another student from the University of Texas to his parents' home in Houston. He was dropped off at the corner of Westheimer Road and South Ross Road near Uptown Houston at around 6:15 p.m. The thought is that Corll had offered to give him a ride home, where he then assaulted him and strangled him to death after having his way with him. His body was found under a large stone, covered in lime, wrapped in plastic, and bound with nylon cords, which seems excessive if they're already dead. Now,
This is like Jeffrey Dahmer status.
yeah. So it gets worse from here, and we're going to go into that on the next video because there's a lot more detail. But for now, we're going to leave it at that. And just hang with us for the next one, guys. It gets really bad from here. Anyway, let's wrap this one up because just where it's going to go, I want to have a good night for Halloween, and it's not going to be like that after. Don't expect to have a good night after we're done with the next part of the episode. But yeah, so far, touches kids, kills kids, kidnaps people, and buries them in various spots, and he has 2 accomplices. That's where we're at with it.
And chews on things.
And he chews on wieners.
And hot dogs. Let's call it hot dogs.
Hot dogs? That's the euphemism we're going to use for this is hot dog? Whatever. Hot
I'm
dogs.
trying to say it without saying it.
Yeah, but you're going to make everybody that sounds like they go to Costco for food look like a creeper.
Then, okay, wieners. Whatever.
I don't know if this is ever going to come up again where we talk about someone chewing on wieners. But okay. Anyway. Anyway, guys, for Vanishing Eights, have a happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
And we will catch up with you guys on the next episode. We're trying to do more of them. I'll be doing some more throughout the week, so I'll probably do a lot of them solo just because I have a little more free time than Jack and Katie Cat. So expect a lot more content coming up in the near future. And for Jack, I'm Jay, and this is...
Somebody. Or Katie Cat.
I'm mortified. Well, guys, happy Halloween. Good night. And as always, good nightmares.
Bye.